tell you what it is. I'm your ice cream.
Welcome to the Stop the Vanilla podcast. Here at Stop the Vanilla, we want to be a resource to help you achieve your business goals by having the right strategy and the right talent. And today we are in part 2 of a 3-part series on how the pandemic is affecting strategy and talent in your business. Part 1, which we've already completed and the podcast has been posted, is how's the pandemic affected strategic planning. And we really talked about how you have to be more agile, how you have to communicate more effectively. You have to really be more engaged on working on the business. So we encourage you to check out that podcast. A lot of really good stuff there that you can implement into your business immediately. Today, Mark and I are going to talk about how the pandemic is affecting talent development, talent management, talent retention, and all the key aspects of the talent piece. And then our third part is to really focus on your questions, our listeners' questions. And we would like you to submit any questions you have on how the pandemic is affecting strategy and talent, how you can more effectively manage strategy and talent through this process, through the situation that we're in with the COVID-19 virus. And we'd love to, give our best shot in giving you some content and some answers to those questions based on our experience working with hundreds of companies. We're working with companies through this stuff right now, making sure that they make good strategy and good talent decisions. So submit any questions you have to info@stopthevanilla.com, and we'll have them on our third podcast of this 3-podcast series on how the pandemic is affecting strategy and talent management and development. So, Mark, welcome back to the Stop the Vanilla podcast. It's good to have you in this remote setting that we still have going on here. So, we're going to take a look at how the pandemic has affected talent from 2 angles. First of all, we're going to talk about how it's affected it right now and what are some things that you as business owners and leaders should think about as it relates to talent right now during the pandemic. And then the second question we're going to tackle and spend some time on and give you a bunch of tips and pointers and resources is how to handle talent as we start working through and come out of this pandemic. And so we're going to look at it from 2 angles, during and after, and provide you as much insight as possible for you to implement things into your business immediately to help you manage talent, not only during but after the pandemic. So that's what we're going to accomplish today. You up for that, Mr. Zelinski?
Absolutely.
So Mark Zelinski is a strategy and talent advisor with Stop the Vanilla. One of his expertises is really helping organizations, improve their performance and performance enhancement. And maybe even spending a little bit more time with the leadership team there to put a strategy and talent plan in place, and then kind of exits and then plays a coaching role. So he's done that several times and really has had a lot of success doing that. So Mark and I find that, with our different styles, we go at topics, we really kind of come up with some good ideas, and that's what our hope is today. So our main question, we have, again, 2 questions today. And the first one we're going to tackle is, what does talent look like during the pandemic? Mark and I are both working with a lot of companies on their talent development, their talent decisions, their talent planning during this crisis. And so, Mark, what are some of the things that you're seeing with the clients that you're working with that are really important for them, really important takeaways today that they need to think about as they manage and develop talent during the pandemic?
Well, there's a couple things, Steve. First, I think from an emotional standpoint with the employees, I think we have to pay particular attention to the different risk profile that individuals have, because some employees are taking this very seriously, either because they have some personal health concerns or health concerns at home, and other employees are a little bit less cautious about the whole thing. And if we don't pay attention to those various needs, we're going to cause some frustration or confusion or concern within the organization. We need to understand those people at both ends of the spectrum and really trying to find a way that we work with and manage through all of that to make sure that the entire organization is pretty comfortable. So that's, on the emotional side. But the other piece is we need to make sure that we think about the key employees, the people that are truly keepers in the crisis, and that we need to pay special attention to from a developmental standpoint, because they're going to be the leaders down the road. And I'm working with a company right now that's being faced with furloughs and layoffs, and they have to really consider who might be available when things pick up and when this crisis begins to ebb, and make sure that those people are available. So there's some risk in there if you furlough the wrong people, or if you lay off the wrong people, because they might not be available on the back end of this. So you have to take care of the people that are there. And if you do have to furlough, you have to make sure that you're really thoughtful about it, so that when this crisis subsides, you have a stronger organization than you have today.
Yeah, so the first takeaway out of that, and I had that down in my notes as well, is that you have to be very thoughtful about who you work to keep and who you furlough or who you let go, to make sure that your organization gets to profitability or break even or whatever you're trying to accomplish during this time, just survival to a certain extent. When we go into organizations, and Mark and I have had this conversation many times, when we go into organizations to help an organization right size, or to get to a healthy profit line so they can reinvest in the business, you have to be very strategic about, does this employee deliver a key skill set that's important to delivering our differentiation, what we do, right? And so one of the things that is in every talent plan that we create is really identifying, call them the rock stars, call them the core team, calling it the people that this business needs to deliver what we do, to satisfy our customers. You have to have that list, and they are protected. We got to keep these. And in fact, not only do we have to keep them, but we have to invest in them so that they stay and we retain them. So if you have that list, I applaud you on that. But one of the takeaways first out of this podcast for you is list those 10 people, list those 50 people, whatever the size of your organization is. What are 20%, Mark, 30% of your workforce that you cannot afford to let go, furlough, or lose in any way, shape, or form? And those are the people that you spend the most time on. Does that sound about right to you, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some great tools. These have been around for a while, but develop a leadership development matrix. It's a tool that gives you a visual of who are the rising stars, who are the employees with great potential, who are the irreplaceable pros or the projects in your company, and then you have a visual template of I really got to keep this guy, I really need to work on that guy, and it really helps you get your arms around the talent in your company.
Yeah, it's also another technique that a lot of companies use, and we have this in our talent toolbox as well, and that's the 9 box, which is potential versus performance, right? So the ones that have high potential but also are performing well typically are those ones that you want to make sure that you hang on to. So the 9 box is another effective talent evaluation tool to make sure that we're recognizing, we're identifying and recognizing and investing in the people that not only have high performance now but have high potential. And so that's another technique that I would encourage companies to use.
Yep.
One of the other things that I'm seeing, Mark, too, especially in these times, that really what I would call progressive leaders are doing is they're investing in what we call the total person, right? I mean, right now there are a lot of people that are struggling emotionally, socially, physically, in a lot of different ways. And that's where it's critical to invest in the total person. So if you're having a conversation with those core team members, all your team members, about how they're doing, how can we help you get through this, you're going to retain them. But if you ignore the total person, they might eventually want to find a place that cares about them as a person. That total person development is really critical, and it's even become more critical in the pandemic because a lot more needs are servicing now, right? So touching base with people and seeing how they're doing and how you can help them through this is critical, because the greatest challenge of the pandemic, Mark, and you and I have seen this and experienced it and are experiencing it, is uncertainty. I mean, there is incredible amounts of uncertainty. I mean, this is the greatest level of uncertainty I've experienced being in the marketplace for 30 plus years. And uncertainty creates unsettledness. It creates anxiety. It creates a lot of stress. And so as an organization, we got to be out in front of that. We got to be proactive about it, open about it, versus just ignoring it and then maybe having it bubbling up, creating some type of health issue, relationship issue, or even a personnel issue at the organization. In the companies that you're working with, Mark, what are some other techniques or other things that companies are doing right now to work through it from a talent perspective during this time?
Well, to reiterate what you just said, regular communication is really important. People need to know as much as possible, because a void of communication, a lack of communication is going to naturally yield to speculation and guesswork, which is never productive.
Yeah, rumors.
So if you have, it's really easy to drift away from some of your regular team meetings or some of your regular communications, whether that's monthly or quarterly, however often the organization does it, because we're trying to survive and we're trying to deal with the crisis at hand. But if you don't have that communication, you're going to cause all kinds of issues in the company. And on the leadership development side, you need to stay the course. If you have a team development process or a leadership development process, you need to keep it going, because again, in a crisis like this, it's easy to drift away. Frankly, if you don't have one of those things, either a leadership or a team development process, now is a great time to initiate one, to start one, because in many cases we have a little bit of time because things aren't as busy. I have an organization right now I'm working with where business has softened, and with their PPP money, they're encouraged to obviously hang on to their employees. So there's time to do some of the activities that you might not be able to, or might be harder to initiate when the business returns to normal.
Yeah. One of the concepts that we have here that I want to encourage leaders to is really this concept of shepherding the talent and be the shepherd of the talent. There's a saying that leadership isn't a title; it's a responsibility, and so you don't sign up for leadership. You are in a position that requires leadership, and those people are looking to us to be proactive, to communicate, to invest in them, to guide them, to coach them. And so all leaders at this point, as much as there is all this uncertainty, we're not sure what we're going to step in when we move forward, right? But we have to lead. That is a responsibility we have. And being the shepherd of the talent is taking this mindset that I'm going to care for the total person and I'm going to invest in our team. And when leaders do that right now, especially in hard times, they build a loyalty and they build a high-performance organization, because those are the types of leaders that people want to work for and work with. And so this concept of shepherding a talent, we have a lot of content on it about our website, but I would encourage you to become a shepherd of the talent and invest in the talent that's around you. It is not only is it incredibly rewarding as a leader and as a person, but it's essential to maintaining the talent that you need during times like this.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else on your list, Mark? Any other talent tips or ideas on dealing with talent during the pandemic?
No, not really. I would just say that obviously we've talked about communicating, with paying attention to individual employees in terms of their needs, and making sure that if we have a talent plan and a communication process, we keep it going. And then in terms of making the tough decisions, just make sure you make the right choices. Make sure that if you do have to let people go or lay them off, that you make the right choices there, so that on the backside of this thing, the organization is stronger. And those things are difficult and they're not easy, but they need to be done in times like this.
So let's spend like a minute, Mark, on what we include in a talent plan. So if a leader's listening to the podcast today and they got a lot of stuff in their head around their talent, but they haven't written it down, let's talk about what's in a talent plan. And a talent plan can be 1 page. It doesn't have to be 20 pages, right? So the first thing that I always like to talk about in a talent plan is what are the strengths of our talent? Like, where are we really good? And that leads you to then talent retention. We got to make sure we retain the strengths that we have, the areas of the company that we're really strong. Like, we're really strong in engineering. We got to make sure we invest in the engineers. We got to make sure we keep them and retain them. Another section in the talent plan is obviously where our concerns are, where our weak spots are, our blind spots regarding our talent, and documenting that and writing that down, and then putting action plans around that. What other components, Mark, do you have off the top of your head that leaders should really put down on a piece of paper, document it, that's in a talent plan?
Well, in my view, we have tools that we use at Stop the Vanilla. Behavioral science tools are really important, and in whether it's now with our talent or whether it's later in terms of maybe filling the gaps with candidates. We use behavioral science to vet the various candidates out there and help us coach them out. It helps us point out not the hard skills, but the strengths and weaknesses from a behavioral science standpoint, because down the road, we're going to have more hiring noise. And currently, those tools help us really sort out where we need to help our current employees in terms of strengths and weaknesses and build on the talent that we have.
Yeah. Other things that I see in a talent plan are identifying who your rock stars are. We talked about that core team. Others, who the high potentials are. This is another conversation we have with a lot of leaders that, the up and comers, the people that are going to be the leaders of this company in the future, and really identifying your high potentials. And then really being deliberate about what the leadership development priorities are for your core team members, your direct reports, and having that documented. Succession planning is always one. Not sure if there's, you're going to want to take time for succession planning right now, but so a talent plan is, 8 to 10 key topics that really define where we're strong, where we're not, and where we're going with our talent. And so if you have that all in your head as a leader about your organization, just want to encourage you to start writing that stuff down, because as you write it down, you build your talent plan. You build on your talent plan. So you don't have to recreate it every time you think about it in your head. It's on paper, and you got names, and you got leadership development plans, and you got conversations you need to have, and you got action plans you need to take. And so be very deliberate about your talent plan for your organization in these times.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So that is really just a really quick conversation around some of the key takeaways that we're getting from and executing with our clients in the pandemic regarding talent. Now, let's talk about what does the mindset need to look like, Mark, as we, start getting hopefully to the backside of this thing and the economy starts opening up and our business starts coming back. What are some of the talent components that we really need to think about, and how coming out of this, what are some of those action plans that we need to take? So go ahead, Mark, with a couple longer-term talent plan things that leaders need to think about.
Well, the first thing I thought about in terms of the backside of this, when we start to rebuild an organization that we might have had to shrink a little bit, or bring some people back, is employees and candidates are going to have, in my opinion, more challenging questions for us regarding your culture, how you handled the crisis. There's going to be conversations about your financial stability and how you're able to weather the storm. So I think you have to think more about those kinds of questions as you start to talk about filling in the gaps in your organization. Candidates are going to pay closer attention to those kinds of issues. Some firms out there, obviously, in this crisis have really tipped over. You see it particularly on the retail side of things, and they didn't really have the ability to handle this kind of thing. So employees of the future, I think, are going to pay even closer attention to making sure that the company they join can handle this kind of thing. And then obviously you need to make sure that those candidates have the right fit in your organization and fit into your development programs.
So one of the most interesting conversations that I've had with leaders regarding talent, not only during but after this pandemic, is that there's going to be more candidates out there. But that does not change the fact that every hire we make still has to be the right person, right? I mean, we're going to have more options. There's going to be more fish in the pond, as they say. There's going to be more candidates to choose from, but that just because there's more candidates doesn't make it any less important about making the right hire the first time, right? So whether I got 2 candidates or 10, I still got to hire the right person.
If anything, it makes it harder because there's a lot more noise. There's probably going to be a lot more unqualified candidates for a role that you have to sift through. And boy, I remember a few years back when I was running a company and I would get 100 resumes and a vast majority didn't have the skills for the position, but you still have to take the energy to go through some of that. So to your point, making a poor hire is very expensive, both in terms of time and money. So we all are best served to be patient and make sure that a candidate is the right fit for the company. And I don't think that's news to anybody.
Yeah, and that goes back to something you said a little bit earlier, where let's take time to identify exactly what we need in each role, right? We might have more time right now in our hands to job benchmark, define the key accountabilities for a role. The key accountabilities are the 3 to 5, key accountabilities for each role, and we rank them in order of importance, and then we put the amount of time, we weight them in the amount of time that a person will spend on them in a week or a month. And like that one page provides such clarity for people that are either in the role or that are considering the role as a candidate. And so defining the key accountabilities. With one of the clients I'm working with right now, we are defining the key accountabilities for every major role in the organization, and it's providing incredible clarity because one of the things that our assessments told us right out of the gate is there's a significant lack of role clarity across the organization, and defining key accountabilities is one way to do that. And so define what you want in the role, use behavioral science to develop that target, then use behavioral science on the candidate or your internal candidates and compare them against that benchmark, and you see where the gaps are. These are all tools that are used every day in the talent world that we could help you with, but just recognize that because there's more candidates doesn't make making the right hire any less important. And that was one key thing that I've had several conversations with leaders about that over the last couple of weeks. Another thing that strategy within talent moving forward. And I got one of the crazy things about this pandemic market is it's very much impacted certain industries, and other industries it's actually elevated. And so in industries where they're booming because people are buying more online, or they're worried more about their generator, for example, backup power, that type of thing, there are a lot of companies that are booming right now. And the mindset that I've talked to a lot of leaders about in that case is what we call being a talent hawk. We just did a podcast on that, and it's really about this mindset of being on the constant look, right, for talent that you could bring into your organization. And that comes from the talent plan. So what are the next 3 major hires that I'm going to make as we continue to grow? And am I networking? Am I out there being a talent hawk, looking for those people so that when we're ready to make the hire, it's about me making a couple phone calls and getting some people in here that I've already had a conversation with about the opportunity. Being a talent hawk is about knowing what you need and being on the lookout for that. And then when you find it, build that relationship, build that network so that when you go to make that hire, you just built your own candidate pool. So that's another topic. There's another topic that I had on my list here. Other things, Mark, that you're seeing with your clients that they're thinking about for talent after the pandemic?
Well, we're talking about talent, and it just all needs to be part of your strategic plan. A key component of your strategic plan when you sit down and the last time we had the conversation, we talked about making sure from a planning standpoint that we, again, stay the course and that we have our regular meetings. And we talked about our sprints in the last session, where we are going to sit down and make sure that we review our plan every 4 months or so. And a key component of that, obviously, has got to be the talent plan and making sure that we do exactly what you say. We talk about the talent in the organization, where the gaps are, and that we're always looking for that person that will bring value to the organization. And that's just a constant search.
Yeah. Yeah, I use the term, I've seen other people use it, but it's called talent stack. So what stack of skills are we looking for, and is it possible to find that talent stack in one individual, or is it 2 individuals or 3 individuals? But what talent, what skill sets specifically does our organization need, and being very conscious about having the radar on for that talent stack. One of the things too that a lot of companies are already talking to us about here at Stop the Vanilla, Mark, is, okay, Steve, when we start seeing this thing, leveling out a little bit, we're going to want to reset our vision. And when we reset our vision, that gives us an opportunity to reset our talent plan, because the way vision and talent planning works, and this is what we do every day, right, Mark? Where do we want to be in 3 years, both subjectively and financially, objectively, and really painting this clear and vivid picture of where we want the organization to be in 3 years. And then what does our structure need to look like to support that 3-year vision? What does our structure need to look like in 3 years to achieve the vision? And then the talent plan is just from where you are currently to that new structure. It's the talent plan is the bridge to get you from where you are to where you need to be. And so we see a lot of organizations preparing to reset their vision and to reset their talent plan, because obviously none of us have ever experienced anything like this before, and it's really resetting things. It's a whole new dynamic, a whole new environment. There's different demands by consumers and customers every day that are changing. And so we're in the process of resetting, going to reset our vision here soon for the next 3 years, because, what we do, I don't know if it was dramatically changed, Mark, what we do here. I mean, it's virtual versus being in person, and I'm already starting to now, work with clients in person again. Obviously being very cautious about respecting social distancing and all that kind of stuff. But we've kind of repositioned how we do things, and we got to take that into consideration when we're developing that next 3-year vision.
Yeah, there's no question that this is changing the world in terms of how we communicate, how we travel, how we attend group settings, how we do this kind of thing, and you've got to find the right people that are wired for that. And when we talk about, improving our talent pool, it's an evolutionary process. It's not revolutionary. Most of us aren't going to go out and just, have a regular process of terminating and hiring. That just doesn't work in terms of morale. You have to evolve into improving your organization, and it takes some time and some work and some thought, which is why it needs to be an integral part of everything that you do in terms of strategic planning and the sprints that we talk about all the time.
Yeah. You just brought up a good point with it. There's a topic within what you just said there too, and that is, as this thing continues to open up, there's going to be a lot of companies back hiring again. One of the keys there is that you have a consistent hiring process, because when not every hire is going to work out, and so, but when it doesn't, we look back at the process and we say, what did we miss here? How did we miss this one? How did we not do it? I mean, after doing this for 20 years, our hiring accuracy is really high. But if there's one that doesn't work out, we look back and say, okay, what did we miss here? And we fine-tune the process for the client. But doing it the same way every time is critical, because now your process is working for you. And when it doesn't work, you can tweak it and improve your process. So one of the takeaways here is spend time on defining a consistent hiring process. On a high level here, what we recommend is once the candidate pool is built, well, first of all, define what you're looking for, job benchmark it, do all the things you need to do to really understand the key accountabilities for the job, build the candidate pool. First interview is about the hard skills. Do they have the technical ability to do the job? And then the candidates that do, then you assess them, and the second interview is about behavioral fit to the role and cultural fit to the organization. And so it's really a 2-interview, very efficient but very high accuracy process, because you're using behavioral science and you're using a consistent talent process to make sure you make the right hire. So another encouragement there is, if you're going to be hiring a lot, make sure that you keep getting better and better at your hiring process, because as Mark said earlier, hiring mistakes are 3 to 5 times annual salary, and that can cripple a company from a standpoint of, having to make a change when we just made a hire 6 months ago. I mean, that's brutal.
Yeah, and as we've talked about, and we keep saying this, and I think anybody that hires and fires and manages employees knows this, but we keep reiterating it. People usually don't perform poorly in their role because of their hard skills or their lack of hard skills. It's because of the behavioral science flaws in the hiring process, which is why we think that's so important.
Yeah, agreed. The other thing I've written down here is really, as we come out of this, to really continue to focus on building your bench strength. When there is a lot of talent out there, how can you upgrade in some of those positions that you identified earlier as being challenges for you? And just really coming out of this thing with a solid talent plan. We have done a podcasting on talent planning. We have several templates on our website on talent planning. Talent planning during and after this pandemic is essential to your business success. And if you're not doing it, then talent's running you. You got to be very proactive in managing the talent in your organization. And our mindset here is every year, take the talent up a little. And when you're in your 3rd and 4th year of talent planning and development, you have one of the highest performing teams in your industry, if not the highest, because you are shepherding the talent. So those are all good takeaways there. As we get close to the end of our podcast here, Mark, any other key takeaways for talent, either during or after the pandemic, that you want to provide?
I think we've covered a lot in the last few minutes, Steve. It's really just to summation is make sure that you communicate, make sure that you stay on top of the talent and development process within the company. Make sure that you use behavioral science in your hiring and your evaluation process, and again, communicate with your people, and make sure that the morale's in the right place so that we can get through this thing. And if you have to furlough, make sure it's the right people, and you have to think about the risks on the backside, because some of those talented people might not be able to return or might have moved on if you are forced to let them go over a short period of time.
Yeah, I think the encouragement I would give any leader today would be is to take 1 or 2 action plans that we talked about to implement around your talent during the pandemic and put those into place. And then start thinking about, what are the 1 or 2 action plans I can start working on now that are going to help us come out of this from a talent perspective. And so you're talking about implementing anywhere from 2 to 4 action plans to be better with talent during and after the pandemic. There are a ton of resources on our website at stopthevanilla.com. Again, we want to be a resource here at Stop the Vanilla to help you with strategy and talent development during and after the pandemic. And we want to help you achieve your business, your career, and your life goals by having the right strategy and right talent. I want to thank Mark for being with us today here in the podcast.
Thank you, everyone.
And just know that if it's providing you a template, if it's coaching you through something, if it's taking you and your team through a process, that here at Stop the Vanilla, we want to be a resource to help you not only survive through this pandemic, but come out of it better than ever. And so thanks for joining us today on the podcast, and let us know how we can help you achieve your business, your career, and life goals with the right strategy and right talent. Thank you for listening to the Stop the Vanilla podcast. If today's episode would bring value to someone you know, make sure to pass it on to them. If this podcast has brought you value, make sure you leave a review, helping others find it as well. If you want to receive our content, head over to stopthevanilla.com and sign up for The Scoop, a weekly email of quick tips on strategy, talent, and leadership. Or download a ton of free resources and templates. Thanks again for tuning into the Stop the Vanilla podcast, where we help you achieve what you want in your business, your career, and your life by having the right plan, implemented with the right talent.
Let me cool you one time, you be my regular style.